do that.
Hey, welcome to the Land of Confusion show, the Ricochet show by members, for members, where we interview members. And today we have with us EJHILL. But first, here's my co-host, Don.
Hi, I'm Don. I'm here in my back porch in Palo Alto. It's a beautiful day. Redwoods. Welcome, EJ.
Welcome. I mean, thank you. I mean, I'm just, I'm sitting here in my basement in front of my editing suite. There's no redwoods to be found anyplace.
You do have a Christmas tree.
Yes, I do. I have a Christmas tree here behind me because you may have read on the site, my son was renovating the bathroom. And so things that used to live in little hideaway places, if they had plumbing over them, it got moved.
I see.
My little Christmas tree here got moved out into my office, and lots of people in very many countries. James Dellingpole was making fun of my Christmas tree, but it's I've started to become fond of it. I like just, maybe I'll just turn over here and pet it every once in a while.
Yeah.
Oh, so nice.
So you guys were just about to tell me how you first met.
Well,
yeah, I was doing a football game in beautiful Palo Alto, or I guess
this was about 6-7 for the folks. This was about 6 or 7 years ago, and yeah.
And I guess it's technically called the city of Stanford, right?
Yeah, Stanford. I wouldn't call it city. It's what is it?
Town,
there's a name
village.
for township, village. Maybe there's a name for this, but it's not technically part of the city of Palo Alto.
Yes, and I came out to do a game for that 4-letter network in Bristol, Connecticut, and Don volunteered to take me to breakfast and show me around on on game day. I think it was, wasn't it? Because
I think it was.
We didn't have to be in the truck until about 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon. Right.
So sometime in the morning, EJ was at the hotel there. I picked him up, and we went out to this lovely little place for breakfast, which is like a Silicon Valley kind of where all the people meet up, and but it's still a charming place in the hills. The hills behind Stanford, and then we bopped around Stanford, gave him a tour.
He took me by Peter's house, and we TP'd the place.
Yeah, TP'd the
place. And I'm confessing to a major crime right now, and we'll.
He's the guy who did it.
Yes.
Sorry, Peter. Yeah. Peter lives very near the Stanford campus, and I used to run into him a bunch of times during dog walks and things.
Back when that was allowed.
Well, back when I had a dog. So, we've both been.
Well,
I think
unless you're walking somebody else's dog, Don. I mean.
Well, that's always good.
You could borrow one, maybe.
Oh yeah, well yeah, good. But yeah, when you have a dog, my dog died about 2 years ago, I guess, 1.5 years, and but yeah, I used to see Peter a lot on dog walks. So anyway, that was fun. That was a blast. We had a great time, and yeah, it was like a soccer event. I think you were filming or something.
No, we were there for football.
Football.
It was back when Stanford had a decent team.
And yeah, and their
the women's football team is about to become really great.
Yeah, and their what's the word I'm looking for? Their character for what's the name for their mascot? Excuse me, mascot. Their mascot is it's an unoffensive tree. It used to be an axe or something, but then they went to an unoffensive tree.
Well, I don't know much about college sports as far as rooting for a team that has great tradition or rooting for a team that has a great mascot, I went to the University of Akron. And when I was there, we earned their nickname, which is the Zips, because we'd go out to Ohio State and get waxed 65 to zip. We'd go to Nebraska and get waxed 72 to zip.
Yeah.
And we've got our mascot is Zippy the giant rat. It's supposed to be a kangaroo, but he looks just like a giant yellow rat. And he's got a zipper on his pouch. And that's how they got their nickname, because the gentleman who invented the zippered galosh worked for Goodyear.
Mm.
And they said, oh, these are the hot new rage of 1895. And we're going to name our team after them, and we're going to call ourselves the Zippers.
Well, that's yeah. I remember I've been writing this book set in the First World War, and so every so often I'll go and I'll say to them so do these people even have zippers? I have to do the history and look up all the background. Yeah. So I learned the history of zippers already.
Well, the best mascot is, of course, the UC Santa Cruz banana slugs, and that went out. That I'm sure they had a big vote on that, and very much like the internet vote that named that boat, the ship, the British ship,
Happy McBoatface or something like that.
Bodie McBoatface.
The one that I was
banana slugs.
The one that I was rooting for was the Binghamton College in Binghamton, New York, which is just right outside of Cooperstown. They had something that was deemed as being offensive, and they were going to change the name of their mascot. And I was rooting for what came in third, I think, which was the Binghamton Crosbys.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, but too many people by that time didn't
know
have
who
no
that
recollection of who Bing Crosby was, so they passed over it.
There was a joke about naming a Milwaukee team, the Milwaukee Talkies. Should be good. Anyway,
so now that we've chased everybody away,
don't worry. No, our diehard fans love this stuff, right?
I hope you're going to edit this stuff. That's all I have to say.
Nah, I don't think we've ever edited it. Anyway, so let's talk Photoshop. How do you do it?
Very carefully. Actually, since I started working for Ricochet full time, I got
newsflash. I didn't know you worked for Ricochet full time.
Yeah, it was announced a couple of months ago, because otherwise I would have no employment whatsoever. And that's another story. I mean, COVID has devastated the freelance community in television. And so has technology. It was a double whammy. And so I'm retired from the TV business. Some of it voluntarily, some of it involuntarily. But when I started working for Ricochet full time, and they bought me the latest copy of Photoshop and some nice editing software to do the video promos and the other video work that we're doing with increasing frequency now. And
nice.
All of these things that I used to do, I'd cut people out, take 175 small cuts to cut somebody's face out. And now I get over here and it says quick actions, remove background, click. Oh crap, it's gone. And it's clean. And it's like, but it's getting easier and easier to fool people. And I was having this conversation with my oldest son today. I remember back in the 1980s when I first got into television,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a subscription to Broadcasting Magazine, and Photoshop had just come out, and there was an article in the back that said the coming crisis in American journalism, and they predicted that as the stuff that we saw on the screen in Star Wars would start to filter down to the individual, when we all got the power to manipulate images, that we wouldn't know what to believe and what not to believe. And that article was probably 30 to 40 years too early,
Yeah.
because it's only gotten to the point recently that you look at something and say, is that real? I mean, and especially now with this technology that's called deep fake.
Yeah.
And of course it first found its legs in the pornography industry. But it's going to be, it's filtering down into the dirty tricks of politics. And very, very soon you're not going to know what to trust and what to believe. And
Well, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Now,
Yeah.
However, to do that, you don't really need technology either. And we see lots of examples of that happening without the technology. For instance, when a certain occupant of the White House gives a speech and absolutely no people are attending, they put the camera right up on him, and you don't see the real scene, that there's nobody there, right? And that is lying with photography, but there's no technology there.
No, that's true, but that's just a contextual
Right,
problem.
right.
But it's
Yeah.
not it's not a deliberate falsification of the record,
Yeah.
which is what Photoshop can be, and what this new deep fake video technology can do. I mean, we're I don't think that that framing something is the same as being out and out deceptive.
Well, I think it can. I think it's usually intended to be deceptive, and it's often very successful, I think.
Yeah.
I think and we've seen that a lot. Yeah.
I think the difference is that in the past, we have so many movies and TV shows where there's always this smoking gun video that comes loose in the late days of the political campaign. And people would say, oh, here he is. Here he is on tape confessing to murdering all these people, or taking drugs from the bad guys, or doing the bribe. And now we can just make it look like it's happening, whether or not it's true. And now people no longer believe anything.
Well, my favorite thing on that, on television shows, is the enhance that button. They still haven't given me that.
That's the best
Well, you
running
need to wait
joke
for Blade
ever.
Runner.
Enhance.
There's a look. You can see the license plate there. Can you enhance that? Sure.
Enhance.
Watch this. Enhance. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. Information that doesn't exist doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And although security cameras are always the cheapest cameras known to man. They're black and white and maybe have 300 lines of resolution, but they always produce a crystal clear picture for after you've hit the enhance button.
Right.
Right.
and they're probably covered with dust too.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. But yeah. So I don't know that we've seen this used, the deepfake, as in that way yet, and people know
there was
about
something
it.
with Pelosi, as I recall. There was
yeah?
definitely stuff where she was like, people, it went on Twitter and was around that she was saying or doing something, and then they found No, they figured it out within a couple days that no,
Mm.
she never was there doing that thing at that time.
Yeah, the when you'll see it used maliciously
Mhm.
will probably be in an October surprise situation.
Mhm.
You know,
Maybe.
they'll want to drop it when there's 2-3 days away from voting, but not enough enough time to disseminate it, but not enough time to refute it.
Yeah.
And that's where it'll do its most damage.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's
And that
hard
is
to
the
say.
magic timing there.
I got to say, as someone who's studied a little bit of politics and been involved in the process, it's really hard to make that time decision because, especially in Canadian campaigns where it's like a month long, you drop it in the last week, it's usually not going to make a difference. You have to have those things early on so that it has time to percolate through the consciousness. We had my previous predecessor, he stole like 30 grand from our association, which is in Canada a fair bit of money, and for a political campaign. And they dropped the story in the last weekend of the election. No one cared. Which for us, it's like this election's people have already figured this out. Like you have to time that really well. I guess an American election where it's forever,
No,
special
also,
election. So
our campaigns are getting to the point now where you know, 1/2 to 3/4 of our electorate could have already voted by voting day.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it would have to be an extremely tight race
Mhm.
to the point where, and believe me, professional polling is a lot much better than the amateur stuff that you see quoted in the newspapers.
Yeah.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
And if they thought it would make a difference, I think so. I think there will be a campaign that'll do it.
Yeah, we'll see it one day. But those things are always like, I always find these kind of like technological gimmicks only last me one cycle. And then the other side figures it out. So look at all the people who were Obama's 2012 campaign when everyone got obsessed with his big data win. And then by 2020, everyone's got a big data setup going.
Right. That's true.
Mhm.
I remember the diagram for that. It's like the diagram for the Obama cloud operation.
Mhm.
The diagram alone was 87 megabytes or something. It was insane. It was crazy.
Well, what I know
Yeah.
what I know about politics is only what I've observed. I have a family member who's fairly high up, or at least was in the period leading up to the end of the George W. Bush administration.
Mhm.
And I went through a couple of senatorial campaigns with him and some other national politics. And from what I've observed and some of the things that I've seen and some of the people that I've met, the only thing I know is that I don't want to be involved. It's a nasty, ruthless business, and I don't see it getting any better. And it's filled with narcissists. You really have to be convinced that you have all the answers.
Yeah.
Just to say, gee, there's this massive problem, and the only person who can fix it is me.
Yep.
You know?
And
And that takes a lot of chutzpah. A lot of chutzpah. Chutzpah that
Especially when they're really not going to fix the problem.
yes.
Yeah.
But it's chutzpah that I don't have.
Back when Bill Kristol was a bit more sane, I watched him doing an interview with someone, and I can't remember what it was, but he said something along the lines of like, I was in there in the education department with the Reagan administration because he was chief of staff to Bill Bennett, I believe. And he said, we spent all our efforts, all this time and energy trying to get like a national education, like where the voucher system going. That's where our efforts went. But the most significant thing we did during that time period is the fact that we had half a dozen lawyers go out and help all the schooling Christians who want to do that. That had that little, like, sending out a few lawyers to defend these groups from getting enrolled by the system. That had more of an impact than anything else we did in the time I was there. I was like, well, that's a great admission.
I've met Bill on a couple of occasions. He's friends with my brother-in-law, and I'll just say that what I've said on the site, that I don't like his disdain for the American voter.
Mm-hmm.
He has always had a disdain for the American voter. The quote that I like to bring up more often than not is his reaction to Pat Buchanan's win in the 1996 primaries, and he's never liked the voters, and he never will. And the one thing about this whole thing with in the era of Trump, it has been very, very clarifying, as far as I'm concerned, on exactly where people stand.
Yep.
Because these so many of these people that we looked up to, that we admired, that we followed, they're not interested in Reaganism. Reaganism, as far as they were concerned, was just an unfortunate blip. And it didn't take long for, I mean, the worst thing that happened was the president's Alzheimer's, because that took him out of the game.
Yeah.
And it allowed them to completely rewrite his legacy, so that they could shape it in their image and not his. And they're very good at that. And people think, oh, you're abandoning Reaganism. No, we didn't abandon Reaganism. The Bush wing of the party abandoned Reaganism. They did a long time ago. And they sold us Reaganism. They did a very good job of that. They continued to pump out, we're going to stand with the American worker. They pumped out, we're going to end abortion. They pumped out, we're going to get the deficit under control. And it gave birth to the Tea Party movement, in which the American people rose up and handed the Republicans control of Congress again. And John Boehner held a pillow over its face until it died. And I think that was the beginning of the Trump era. And people said, hey, what's going on? Why aren't these people doing what we asked them to do? Why are, and you go back further than that to the presidency of George W. Bush. Yes, 9/11 was a crisis. But was it a crisis that meant that we had to grow the government by 17%? Was it a crisis that meant that we had to create an entirely new infrastructure called Homeland Security? I mean, he grew the government by 17%. There's no appeal to Reaganism whatsoever in the Bush wing of the Republican Party.
That's interesting, because the Department of Homeland Security, my memory tells me, was because the various departments that we had weren't communicating, weren't sharing information, and weren't being able to pick up on unplanned events like this.
You mean Jamie Gorelick wall? Jamie Gorelick, who said that she was going to that they were going to create a wall between the FBI and the CIA and the National Security Agency and the FBI. Yes.
And instead of just fixing that problem, create this new problem.
Now,
this new monster.
I do recall something about it that was interesting. Is that the reason that it got created as that basically the Bush this thing was coming down the pike from the Democrats regardless, and basically, and with some other people, and basically it was just Bush trying to hijack it so it would be the Homeland Security bill as opposed to like the Kennedy, Nunes, or whatever the hell, whoever were backing it. It was going to be named after them. So it was like they were trying to hijack someone else's plan because they thought it was going to be.
And how did that work out?
Oh yeah, it worked out great.
You only you become like what they used to accuse Bob Dole of being, the tax collector for the welfare state.
Right.
When all you do is try to hijack and appropriate somebody else's big government plans.
Yep. No, look, I remember being mean with some friends, and they were like trying to be neutral because I was a conservative, so they were saying nice things about Reagan. Sorry, W. Bush at the table, and this was when Trump was president. And I just kind of sat there, and I'm like, "You people forget that I hate George W. Bush, right? Like, I think he's the worst president in the last 50 years." Like,
well, you Canadians are an exceptional breed.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're the only people I know who put the words progressive and conservative together.
Yeah.
In a political party, which is an oxymoron as far as.
Yeah. So where that comes from is World War II, and they wanted to get like a coalition going on. So the Progressive Party and the Conservative Party merged, so they could get some. They wanted to expand their size. So that's a weird thing, but it is progressive in the sense of Teddy Roosevelt style progressivism, conservatism, which he was a Republican president, and that's kind of the idea. So we're, like you said, we are the tax collectors. Canadians don't care if they have to pay high taxes. What they hate is fraud, waste, abuse, and so we every so often we get elected and basically trim the fat from the thing. But
how do they feel about pastors being dragged out on the street these days?
Oh, well,
or how do they?
It depends. I think it's awful. I know, but other people are like, why can't these guys just do their Christian stuff over Zoom?
But then you've also got, I'm sure you're aware that Mr. Trudeau sent a couple of RCMP officers to Reporter's House.
Oh yeah,
a couple of weeks ago.
Was that a couple weeks ago? I definitely knew about. There was a guy a couple months ago. I knew about that. That was. Yes. You got to remember, the RCMP is so in Canada. In a lot of the provinces, the RCMP are the provincial police. So often they're not being sent by Trudeau. They're being sent by the provincial premier, who's usually, unfortunately, right now, a conservative, 70 to 80% of the time. There's only British Columbia's a NDP government, Nova Scotia's liberal, and Newfoundland's a liberal government.
Well, I think
the other governments are some sort of conservative.
I think this happened in BC.
Okay.
We
have real mishmash police departments here, so.
And then what is it? Just last week, I don't know if Trudeau had anything to do with it, but. They got PayPal to shut down Ezra Levant's site, which for you non-Canadians is called The Rebel.
Yep.
I'm slipping into my Canadianese again,
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, Canadians, I think we and the Germans are the two worst people to be handling this crisis. We are the most a group of people who have the highest trust in government, probably in the world. And we've never had our government screw up quite this bad, because I've said it on a few shows, we're the big, fat, happy, stupid country. And so the only thing we have that's really like effective is our firefighting department, right? If those guys were running the pandemic, this would be a whole different situation. But we just have governments that are just fat with bureaucrats. Like in Ontario, 1 in every 4 people works for the government.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we've been talking about all this time here is to do with like this division between government and the rest of the people. And people in government who are professional, the politicians who are professional politicians, as opposed to the intent of the congressman. The intent of congressmen in this country is supposed to be regular folks who take time off their regular business for service to the country.
Mhm. Here's one other thing that's going to be a big difference that you guys are not going to quite understand. In Canada, party discipline is ultimately high. Like an MPP or a provincial member of parliament, they don't do anything out that doesn't go with whatever their leader's office says. So you guys got a lot of congressmen running and senators going around making up all their own sign type of thing. That doesn't happen here. If you cross the leader's office, you will be terminated. You will not be allowed to run again. The leaders get to choose who gets to run.
Yeah, Democratic Party runs that way. Republicans don't.
Yeah,
but I think all parliamentary systems are run that way.
Yeah, but I mean, we have party loyalty to such a high level. You can I understand is like there's no independence. There's no independence amongst MPs here. So when the leader says we're doing a lockdown, everyone says, yes, sir. How long, sir? Mm-hmm. And you just don't have any kind of, we have discipline that the Democrats would envy on our politicians.
But the question is do you have the same, among the conservatives now, do you have the same problem that the Brits are having? I mean, Keir Starmer is not in any way leading any effective form of Her Majesty's opposition.
Yeah, and that's been
because they're in lockstep with the government.
Yep, that's pretty much what's been happening here. Everyone knows that if the NDP were in charge in Ontario, it'd be worse, right? If any of the other parties were in charge, we'd be under even worse lockdowns than what we're having under Ford, which is bad enough. I used to defend him, but after I keep going to the grocery stores and he has things walled off now. And I'm like, okay, now we've crossed the line here. They called me asking for money twice last week and I told them to go to hell both times. I was a bit nicer to the premium party people, but I was like, you guys have why should I give you any money? You guys haven't earned it.
What is their philosophy? What is, if you determine that, X product is non-essential.
Yeah.
How does not selling X product?
I guess we're less time in the stores then. I guess it does. It's like, I remember hearing this story about the 70s, and I'm pretty sure it's apocryphal, but supposedly Ford, Rumsfeld, and Cheney are all sitting in the president's office trying to figure out what the price of an apple is because they have price controls. And that's what I see when I hear all these people saying this thing's not essential. I'm like, I'm telling you, buying running shoes is essential. But we're dealing with a government that decided is so convinced they can slow the spread, they banned outside sports, even though all the doctors are writing to them, begging them not to do it.
That's all right. They moved the city of Toronto to Buffalo, didn't they?
What's that?
They moved the city of Toronto to Buffalo, didn't they?
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. Are you talking about the Blue Jays?
Yes, they were playing in Dunedin.
Mm-hmm.
But now that summer is coming, they're moving back to Buffalo.
Okay, well that makes
Someday they're just going to stay there.
Yeah,
I mean in Cleveland for years we used to say go Browns, and then they did all the way to Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. I'm in a situation where I've just decided I can't live in this country anymore the way it's being run, and so as soon as I get my second shot and some other stuff, I'm going to be looking to visit other places and see what else is out there. There's got to be countries that are better run than this.
Better than
I have the
Canada?
money to do it. Mm-hmm.
Name your jurisdiction. Where are you going?
One place I'm looking at is Bulgaria, of all places.
Really?
Do you speak the
10%
language?
flat income tax.
Do you speak the language, or you say, "Oh hell, I'll learn"?
Yeah, I can learn. My mother says I was always good with languages as a kid. I have I'm trying to get my Polish citizenship, so I'll be able to go anywhere in the EU. Yeah, and just move around. I'll come back to Canada on occasion, but I mean, like, it's just like, there's better places than this. I'm reading this book called Nomad Capitalist, and he's just like, hey, there's better healthcare systems and everywhere in the world. You think about where you're living. Is it really the best place for anything? Probably not. I mean, you live in Stanford, Don. You're not doing too bad for a lot of stuff, but a lot of us are just living in the same cities we grew up in, and there's not just like, if I have the resources, which I do, why don't I go somewhere else for a while? I'm looking at Bulgaria's nice, Armenia, Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, I should say. Like this guy here, he has 6 houses, none of them in the United States. He pays $15,000 a year to maintain 6 houses.
Which guy is this?
His name is Andrew Henderson.
Poland could be a very good destination.
Yeah,
I know. Speaking to my son, the Marine, they have high regard for the Polish warriors.
Mm-hmm.
They said that they're some of the craziest SOBs they ever met in their life, and just as tough as anything that ever rolled out of Parris Island, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Every Marine that I've ever met and talked to them about their experiences of fighting with Poles in Afghanistan and Iraq, they said, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we'll take them on as comrades any day of the week.
Yeah,
They're glad they're in NATO now and not on the other side.
right. Yeah, I'm just going to look around and see what this. I'm planning on doing I was originally going to do a trip to Vegas in August with some people, if the borders opened up. But and fly down, and then I was like, I could take rent a car and drive down and try to see some people in Arizona and see the desert. And then I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just spend 2-3 months just crisscrossing America and see all the landscape?
Do that.
Right?
That would be killer. Do that.
Yeah. So I've already started talking to some people and trying to set up some meetups when it comes.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe I'll be driving down to visit you there, Don.
All right, and then and do presentations of each. You know, you could just like visit towns on the way. This would make great material.
Yeah.
Just visit towns and do a little on the spot reporting.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be fun. I'd love that. I love the idea that so many towns in this country have their own personalities,
Mm-hmm.
and their own industries, their own businesses, their own skills, their own beauty, their own architecture, and their own charm.
You're not talking about my hometown.
All right.
My hometown has absolutely no charm whatsoever.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Well, you know, my standard line about my hometown, which is in Northeast Ohio, is that we were the home to 3 things: the Timken Roller Bearing Company, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and Hoover Vacuums. So if it rolled, punted, or sucked, it came from my hometown.
Oh wow!
But then Hoover sold out to Dirt Devil, and they shut the
They
company
did?
down. Yes,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, all the Hoover stuff that you get now is cheap plastic stuff that's made in China. It's not an American company anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it completely ruined my line.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the town lives for 1 weekend a year for when the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction ceremonies take place. And under COVID, we didn't even get that last year.
Mm.
So, you know, and Howard Cosell used to hate it. He absolutely hated coming here. It's a grimy little industrial town in Northeast Ohio. It has no charm of Cooperstown, New York, which is idyllic. No, we've got this dump that's I-77, you know, and it's like, yeah.
Come for the conversation. Stay for the Howard Cosell impression.
Well, we were, but that's what we are. We are a grimy little steel town. And then Big Steel got up and walked away. My grandfather worked in the steel mills. My father worked in the steel mills. And, you know, in all honesty, my father passed away when I was 16. He was age 52 and received no pension whatsoever from, or my mother received none of his pension. 27 years he paid into the union pension fund and got zilch.
Oh, geez.
But if he had lived, he probably would have been without a job and still no pension, because the company would have folded and would have gone overseas. And that's the thing.
When was that about?
That was in the 1970s.
Okay.
At the tail end of steel actually being big steel.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember roughly what time, what years that steel actively left.
It started in the late 1970s and early 1980s. I mean, people forget that there was a reason why the Reagan campaign chose Detroit in 1980. I mean, everybody says, oh, you know, Reagan was all about free trade. No, Reagan was about fair trade. Having the nominating convention in Detroit in 1980 was very symbolic, you know. And and we've talked about this betrayal of the Reagan philosophy with the Bush people. That's part of it. You know, you get all of these people, especially, you know, when we went in, because, you know, NAFTA was originally Papa Bush's thing.
Yep.
And we got all of these politicians that said, you know, I trust the American worker. If we put them on a level playing field, they can compete with anybody. And then they went out and promptly unleveled that playing field.
Right.
And made it to the point that that we had no competitive advantage whatsoever.
Right. And this is part I feel especially bad about, because between regulations, there's like environmental concerns, right? The environmental regulations shut down a lot of industry, where they then moved offshore to a place where there are no environmental regulations whatsoever, and then put out, you know, more pollution. So that was, and we're left without those industries, with more unemployment problems, without that kind of tax base coming in. That sort of thing is just really awful, and it decimated towns.
Yeah, I mean, it surely decimated my hometown. I mean,
it's terrible. And yeah, and I guess that happened mostly, again, those years, there was a lot of that movement of manufacturing out from this country to other countries, just all sorts of manufacturing, just flew the coop. I do think we're going to see a renaissance in manufacturing here. I think it started.
Yep.
And the reason I say that from a technological standpoint is because we're doing more and more with robotics nowadays, and robots in China are not significantly cheaper than robots here. And if you can get the people who can operate, who can control the robots, who can set up the robots, who can do that, we would have a true competitive advantage. I can even imagine all sorts of like advanced software that connects the robots to the logistics, to design, to QA, and, you know, link them all together. And then maybe, like, if you have a bunch of, say, quality issues on the line, you can link that to a particular shipment of a certain part with a date code, that sort of thing. And you can you can have
Well, you
super
have a
efficient
different, you have a bunch
manufacturing.
of different advantages that seem to be coming down the line. The fact that despite the Democrats going to be trying to regulate it, fracking has reduced energy costs significantly. So your energy costs in the United States are quite low.
Mhm.
You want to get your
Until recently.
you have a bunch of people working to get even like look at where's Toyota's largest factories in the world. They're not in Japan. They're in Texas. The Japanese and other companies have moved their industrial plants to where the customers are in order to reduce costs on shipping. And the other thing is 3D printing is becoming better and better. So more and more people, they're just going to have like you might walk into your auto dealership one day and you'll just have them print the car for you that day.
Well, no.
Or some of the
But-
or a lot of the parts, like you can
Well, I'll tell you
customize.
what, a little less than a year ago,
Mhm.
my Marine was sent to 3D printing school.
Mhm.
And he already does a lot of that stuff at school anyway. So it was relatively easy for him to grasp onto it. But what they found out is that it has made government suppliers more efficient. And by that I mean what happened was they, says let's say you're in a maintenance unit out in the field, you're in Afghanistan or what, and the handle breaks off the door of a Humvee. It would take you 6 weeks to get one from the manufacturer. Well, now they have these carbon-based 3D printers. And if you can, and if a Marine can sit down and design one and get it approved by the Defense Department, or in this case, the Department of the Navy, then that they're allowed to print it. Now, they also have to order the part. They do have to order the bona fide 100% replacement part from the manufacturer.
Mhm.
But what used to take 6 weeks, they now can get it in 5 days.
Mm.
Because now the manufacturers know that the core is perfectly positioned to take care of themselves and be independent of their suppliers in the post market.
Huh.
And that's made them more responsive to taking care of their client afterwards.
Good.
Now, I am slightly skeptical of the optimism in 3D printing for a couple reasons. One is that there seems to be a cult of people around the 3D printer that when the apocalypse hits, we're going to have to make spare parts for everything out of.
Well, the tensions aren't
with
there
our
yet.
3D with our 3D printers and plans we download on the interweb. That's kind of a like end of the world kind of cult around that. But the other thing is we've had a lot of computer controlled manufacturing, CNC tools, for instance, for a long time, and we've automated the heck out of that stuff. And machines that can, milling and such, milling machines and such. And we've had, slow, steady progress in that area all along. So I don't think the 3D printing is that much of a big thing. The big advantage that 3D printing has is that it's additive instead of subtractive.
Yeah.
And that's the killer thing, because you can do stuff, you can build stuff with 3D printing you couldn't imagine manufacturing otherwise. So like they're building, like there's this thing about building 3D houses recently. I don't know if you've seen this in the paper. It's been in the news, where they have this machine that just pours cement out in the shape of a house. And so you have this thing that looks like a giant squishy cement house. But in those cases, they don't mention anything about how plumbing is installed or electric is installed, the pipes, how you do that, because I'm not sure how they have that. So, where's the water pipes, gas pipes, sewer pipes? How are you going to put those? And it's not at all
Yeah,
clear.
as you said, it's additive, but I think as the technology matures, it'll get better and better, and we'll get more tension on it. I remember like one of the things that when I was working at Toyota, we were always talking about the cars cycling through so fast that they don't have a stockpile of parts a lot for these cars. Then you have to get them custom. And a 3D printer, my thought would be a 3D printer could solve some of that problems. Now, I looked into it, and the tensions and the strengths of the manufactured goods are not there yet, but that was 5 years ago. Who knows what they are now, and who knows what they'll be 10 years from now.
Yeah, but certainly manufacturing I'm intimately familiar with electronics manufacturing, and that's just gotten so incredibly efficient. Oh my goodness.
We got a couple,
just amazing.
We got a couple members questions for you here, EJ.
Okay.
All right. Let her rip.
Okay, so Arahant wants to know, why did you do it, EJ?
Why did I do what?
That's what I said. I said, what? And he's like, he'll know. I'm like, okay.
I don't know. I've been accused of a lot of things, but I don't know what it is.
The other question here is from Vince Guerra, who's wondering why you're no longer participating in the movie fights.
I'll tell you what, that is the one thing that that becoming an employee has done, is that it has really throttled back my time on the site. I mean, I wrote something today because I had something I wanted to get off my chest about a particular member of the House from Wyoming.
Oh yes, I saw that.
But I don't have the time to do the writing that I used to do. I mean, I had a series of posts that I used to do called the Sidebars of History, in which I would write about famous events, but little things off to the side, the people who were on the periphery of those events. And I used to spend 2-3 days researching and writing and stuff like that, and I simply don't have the time. I mean, I'm producing 2 podcasts full time, and we have a radio show on the weekends. Please check your local listings for your Radio America affiliate and lobby for them to carry the best of Ricochet.
Okay, yeah.
With a short guy from Minnesota by the name of James Lilacs.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, and I sit here. I'm anything that goes up on our site that isn't already from a syndicator. Like I can't use the Eric Erickson show because he has his own syndication deal, stuff like that. But anything that we take from the think tanks and the stuff that we produce our own. I mean, we have this show on the weekend that we present highlights of the previous week's postings. And so I just spend hours and hours and hours listening to the podcasts and trying to call them, interesting bits and pieces, and writing up James's scripts and stuff like that. And so that takes me away from the site. I do most of the tweeting now on the Twitter account.
Okay.
You'll see these 1 minute, anywhere from 30 seconds to 1 minute of snippets from the podcast that I put pictures to.
Those are great. When I saw those first coming out, my eyebrows were going up and down. I said, "Oh, this is really good." I see EJ's working on this.
And that takes time. Sunday nights I start. I'm talking to James Dellingpole and Toby Young as we get ready for London Calling on Monday, and then I have Carol Roth show that comes out on Tuesdays, and then starting on Wednesday, then I have a radio show to get to the syndicator by Friday, which I've got to write, and I've got to send scripts to James to cut. and then when he gets everything cut down to the time that I've given him, then I've got to get that all put together and off to the syndicator for Saturday night distribution. So and then I still do the Photoshops. I still do for Law Talk and
I love
the main
those.
podcast and a few others that really was never planned to be. I mean, I remember when we've been at this for so long, 10 years now. I remember that the first time I did a Photoshop, I had to send it to one of the first editors of Ricochet, which was a young lady by the name of Diane Ellis.
Diane, yeah, I know her, yeah.
Because we couldn't post to the site ourselves. You couldn't post images. There was no idea that anybody would want. Why would you want to post pictures?
Because we couldn't post them on our Facebook accounts anymore without getting like banned.
This is
a long time ago. This was
10 years ago. So I would have to send it to Diane, and then, I mean, even if it was in the comments, not that it was part of the main post itself, but just if I wanted to send, do a Photoshop and put it in the comments, it had to be sent to her, and then she would post it inside the comment. And then they finally threw up their hands and they said, "We're tired of catering to this guy. We'll just ask." At that time, our German masters. The site was hosted by a company in Germany at that time, I believe, which made everything difficult because, the ship would hit the sand and somebody would have to wake up the Germans. We're getting 404 errors. Oh, wait a minute! It's 3:00 in the morning here. What do you want? They just can't this wait until morning? No, it can't, because there's a 14 or 16 hour time difference between California and Stuttgart or wherever they were located, and it's like, you got to wake up and fix this thing.
9, I think it's 9 or 10, but yeah.
Still too damn much.
Yeah, we did an episode with someone from Germany a little while ago, and we've done an episode with someone in Poland. And I think our most difficult one was the one when we had to do the one with St. Augustine in Hong Kong. It was 12 hours difference.
So this was the very first edition of the Ricochet site that I thought had just beautiful design, and the typography. I thought that was great, but it was very limited in what they could do, and the difficulty with working with web people in another country. Yeah, that's crazy. And they used some bizarre framework to do it also, I think. So it was kind of unmaintainable.
Yeah, if I remember the story, because it was a big deal when we moved to 2.0, and I think we're 4.0 now. But when we made that migration the first time, I remember part of the discussion being is we have to do this because we cannot continue to limp along with the framework that we're on.
Right.
In fact, if you go back and you get into the archives, I don't even think all of them reach back that far. But if you get into if you go onto archive.org,
right,
that they crawl the web and they take snapshots, and so every once in a while, I mean, if you get on there, you can go back and you can find some early pages from, and it's only the front page. You can find early pages from 2010 and 2011, and you say, "Oh Lord, what were they doing?" But it is what it is. I mean, I can't, I look at some of the stuff that I've done professionally. You know, I was in broadcasting for 38 years. And it's like, holy crap, look at that crap.
Mhm.
And I thought VHS was hot stuff back then. You know, I could record at home, you know, in 6-hour mode. You know, and it's like, but then again, I'll have to tell you, the one thing that I think has changed the most in the 38 years that I was in television. And there are obvious answers there, you know, the move to digital and high def and how great and wonderful and easy everything can be. And now, you know, you have a television production facility and
Yeah.
transmitter in your pocket.
Yeah.
But the biggest difference is the audience. Because when I first got into the business, we would sit around and we would just knock ourselves silly in what we thought was quality control. You know, somebody would, you know, they could bring in a VHS tape of the mayor getting murdered and we wouldn't put it on the air because we can't hear that. The quality of that tape is awful. But now, what the audience accepts is so much different.
Yeah. Hey, quick question. Back in their earliest days.
You're frozen, gentlemen.
Oh, you're frozen to us. I see
think-
Don moving around fine.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get this working.
Yeah.
Give it a pause. Give it a pause.
Oh,
Okay,
there you're back.
Okay, we're back. Good. Okay. Question on video technology. Back in the day.
You mean the one
There's
that just failed us?
That
Yes.
kind of thing, but
Yeah.
the
But
older
the thing
version
is
of that.
let me finish my thought real quickly,
Oh, yeah.
Don. Is that, you know, there were things that we simply wouldn't put on the air because we thought that the audience wouldn't accept them. And now, especially in the last year during COVID and stuff like that, what we found out is that the audience will accept a lot.
Cat videos.
Yes, all shot in the wrong direction. Yeah, I mean, nobody, I don't know how many people are watching this or if this is going to be available.
Solid 6 or 7.
Yes.
We usually get 30 or 40 people.
But the thing is that you do not have a television set in your house that runs up and down like this. They all run like this, and we know that. But that doesn't mean that we won't pick up our phones and start shooting vertical video. And now we put that stuff on the air. And hollow audio, no big deal.
Yeah.
People are used to it. You want to people, you know, newscasters these days sound like they're broadcasting from the men's room, and nobody cares because there's the audience doesn't care.
Right.
That's been the biggest change. The audience simply doesn't care. Now, what was your question, Don?
Yeah, I was going to question. Hardware question, video. One of the interesting breakthroughs back in the early days was this thing called a video synthesizer that was used to make patterns, visual effects patterns for broadcast TV. And what for those who are unfamiliar with this, what they would do is they would take some video material on a screen and completely screw with the scanning, the horizontal and vertical scanning, and warp the heck out of it, and you ended up, and then they photograph the resulting image with a video camera and send it out. And so you got this whole class of swirly special effects, colorful swirly special effects that were very limited to a certain era. Did you ever work with that, or did you ever play with that?
No, I can't say that I did. And what were you smoking? I mean, did you?
Well, that was the
enjoying-
time.
That you?
No,
Yes.
that was very much the time, and that was very much responsible for it, sure. But yeah, there was a whole class of doing these kind of special effects for mostly used for things like titles and things to give them, pizzazz.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Well, I think that I'm not telling any stories out of school here. I mean, 95% of everything that has ever been done in television is done because we could.
Mm.
And then
Oh, you're back now.
and then maybe 3% we do because people will pay for it. I can slap a sponsor logo on it, so we're going to do it. And maybe 1 or 2% we do for the audience.
Well, we're starting to cut in and out here, so maybe we should. And I know Don usually has to get going after an hour, so maybe we should cut it here and maybe come back later. I'd love to have you on with Gary McVeigh sometime, actually.
Oh yes, Gary's my bud.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that'd be fun.
We could go through the whole history of TV with the two of you. I think that'd be a great show.
I think what's going on is that my Marine is running his virtual meeting next door, and I'm competing for bandwidth this time.
That's no problem.
And and believe me, I do not take precedent over the United States Marine Corps.
Again.
All right, gentlemen, it's been fun.
A blast.
This has been great. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming
Anytime.
on.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Yep. See you in the comments.